Good afternoon. This is Rebecca from Charlottesville. In this section of the presentation, I'm going to spend a few minutes connecting us back to the reason each and every one of us started in education. It's the mission each of us holds deep in our hearts, the mission that gets us up every morning, and this is the part I like the best. It's the mission that helps us in those fairly easy days, and especially those days that are really difficult. We are here today because we want to improve the quality of education for our children in our classrooms, our centers, our programs, and our nation. We now know that through decades of research that the best way to improve outcomes for children is to focus on teacher-child interaction. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. When I think about why to focus on the importance of relationships and teacher-child interaction, I think about three primary reasons. These are three of my favorite things about the class. I think about the fact that interactions matter to student learning more than any other factors. They are the how to improve student outcomes. We now know from over 30 years of research that interactions matter more than a teacher's degree, more than length of experience, or number of toys and books in the classroom. It is student interactions that drive learning, and as a result, interactions are the things worth paying attention to and working on because they are constant and high value. The second piece is that interactions define and clarify what we already know about effective teaching. There's a what that teachers are already doing that we want them to do more of, to do more often, with more consistency, and more deliberately. So whenever I present, I stop at this point because it really is, it's a simple point, but I think it's important. We all have teachers who do the right thing during center time, perhaps during free play, but they struggle maybe during a transition, maybe during teeth brushing time, maybe during breakfast or lunch. And if we can pinpoint those interactions that they are doing well in the time that they're easiest for them, and then help them to make them more often, with more consistency and more deliberately, we can really change education. The other thing I say about the class is that the domains and dimensions of the class are not surprising. They are the things that we already know about great teaching. But what the class system gives us is the ability to be specific about what interactions look like and sound like. And when we are able to link the teacher's actions through behavioral markers and specific examples, we have the ability to better support teachers in a manner focused on outcomes. And the third reason that it's important to focus on teacher-child interaction is a simple one. It's really my favorite. Interactions represent the heart and core of teaching. They are the why we come to work every day. The class domains and dimensions give us a set of common definitions of the why of teaching. These are the aspects of teaching that anyone can relate to and aspire to and continually improve. When each of us thinks back to our days as a teacher or child care administrator, it is not the perfect art project, the most comprehensive data set, or the carefully articulated lesson plan that we remember. It is specific interactions with the child that we remember. I think it's back to the 90s when I was a teacher in Arlington. And I remember when a little boy in my pre-K classroom then noticed that his classmate, Emily, walked with a walker. And he said to me, how can I help her learn how to walk? And then as an inclusion teacher in Madison, Virginia, I remember when Ryan came to me crying because it was his last day of school. And this is going to be his last day at the little school before he moves to the big school. I think many of us are going through that right now with either our children or the children in our classroom. He needed comfort for the emotion he was feeling and support from me that it would be okay. I'm sure that each and every one of you has memories like this, and those memories are tied to interactions. And it is those interactions that are so powerful in the work that we do. And now we know through the class that they're really important to change child outcomes. On the next slide, I'm going to share a little bit of what we've learned about research. So this graphic illustrates when we see higher class scores, what are some of the focus areas that we see? One of the things we see is greater student behavioral engagement and stronger social skills. So in the preschool research, we see that more effective interactions are associated with gains in social competence and lower behavior problems. Next thing we see is stronger vocabulary related to school readiness. In preschool, more effective teacher-child interactions are associated with higher scores in vocabulary and reading, and these are key skills that we all know that kindergarten teachers are asking us for each and every day. And then the last piece that we often see are increased math achievement scores with higher class scores. We know that more effective interactions in preschool are also associated with increased math outcomes, and these include counting, numeracy, comparisons, addition and subtraction, and even telling time. I want to remind everyone about the language that describes the class. When we think about the class, we think about domains, and the three domains are emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. And then we think about dimensions, and then each of the dimensions, such as positive climate, are further developed into indicators and behavioral markers. And it's the behavioral markers that are so important for us to focus on with our teachers, because they represent the what we see in the classroom and what we hear in the classroom. And it's through the class we're able to give teachers specific information about those behavioral markers and a specific example that we can really see them improve. I'm going to take a moment to just talk about the three domains of the class. So the domain of emotional support focuses on the emotional environment in the classroom, including how teachers promote positive relationships and how they help children find enjoyment in learning, feel comfortable in the classroom, and experience appropriate levels of independence. This is one of the domains that I really feel like you can do a gut check with. But then, with the class, you can validate that gut check with an actual observation score. So if I were to take you right now into a classroom in Charlottesville, Virginia, with a high level of emotional support, what would you see? What I would see is a warm, sensitive, supportive teacher who perhaps was sitting on the floor and singing Rain, Rain, Go Away. We're having a storm in Charlottesville right now. So she's probably singing Rain, Rain, Go Away, while the children have a matched affect with her. And you see that relationship between the teacher and the children that helps develop those fundamental competencies. And you might also see those children using the teacher as a secure base to explore and take risks. Or perhaps what you see right now in the middle of a thunderstorm is it's those children who have fear of storms coming close to the teacher and having interaction to provide them comfort. The next domain of the class is the classroom organization. And it refers to the organization and the management of children's behavior, time, attention in the classroom. We know that classrooms function best when children are engaged in meaningful activities that are of high interest to them. Children who are engaged in meaningful activities are much likely to engage in inappropriate behaviors than are children who are provided with uninteresting or insufficient activities. What would you see and hear in a classroom with high level of classroom organization? You see a teacher setting up clear routines and behavioral expectations in calm, ordered, predictable environments that support regulation. People often describe classrooms with high levels of classroom organization as well-run machines. The kids know what to do, the teacher gives clear directions, and everything works smoothly. The last domain is the instructional support domain that I think caused everyone in the field the most level of stress. And it's because it's more than just rote learning. I think we were doing so much of in the 90s and early 2000s. Really focused on problem solving and higher level thinking. Because we know those types of activities really do promote cognitive and linguistic development. We know that learning occurs within a social context, and the teacher's role is really to structure those interactions and challenges, either through open questioning, through setting out science-based activities, or through play. What would you see when you walked into a classroom with a high level of instructional support? You would see a teacher see and hear supporting high-level thinking and building on children's understanding. On a day like today, you might have a teacher asking open-ended questions about the rain and how and why about the rain, and then making connections back to the children's day. When have they had a thunderstorm at their house?
So yeah, I'm going to be looking at some of the strategies for improving interactions in the classroom. I'm going to see if I can't. There we go. So one of the things that Rebecca mentioned that I think is experiences that we bring to the classroom. So when we think about that, we're also looking at effective professional development. It's not enough just to purchase a new curriculum and hand the binder to a teacher. Especially if you're using an evidence-based program, you need to understand what the guidelines are and how other groups have used that same curriculum. For example, if you think about training teachers on a new inquiry-based science curriculum, one teacher might go back to their classroom and do some of the activities with the children, but may not explain them correctly or draw children's attention to the right aspects of the experiment. So the children really don't learn that much about the science behind it. Whereas another teacher who doesn't do any of the activities at all, and then a third teacher who follows the manual to a T and really gets the children engaged in doing mini science experiments. There's a huge difference in how successful that professional development will be in the classroom. So in thinking about quality implementation, it can be really helpful to think about what the core components of the intervention are. What are the most important features, the features that truly deliver the content or lead to changes in teaching? Those components should be implemented with a high degree of quality and fidelity to the program model. So think about how your program is incorporating checks or supports to ensure that the components in particular are being delivered correctly. So it could be through an observation or having the teacher report on what she's doing or having a coach check in with the teacher and talk about implementation of a curriculum. But the most important thing is to get the most out of professional development. There's got to be some sort of support for high quality implementation. So let's look at some of the strategies for each of the different domains of the class. The first one is emotional support strategies. Some of these may seem very obvious, but there's no way to overstate their importance. The very first thing on the list there is get to know each child. Again, that seems so obvious, and of course, we all want to do that. But the important thing is to really get to know each child and what motivates them, and understanding how their rhythm changes from day to day and from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. It's important also to convey genuine interest and talk with children respectfully, be sensitive to their feelings, and to be a good listener, responding to what you hear, as opposed to just, Hold high expectations for every child. And my favorite is validate children's accomplishments and progress specifically. The reason why that is my favorite is because I feel it's so important to, rather than use a generic good job kind of praise, that we actually tell the child what it is we're praising. So for instance, if I tell a child, good job, that might mean to him, oh, I'm doing a good job sitting in my chair, or I'm doing a good job sharing the markers with my friends, or I did a really good job drawing the most fearsome monster ever. So without being clear about what it is that is a good job, children are not as likely to repeat that behavior. So again, we want to validate their accomplishments and progress specifically. Tell them what it is that we're praising them on. Talking with children is essential to building nurturing relationships and promoting children's development and learning. I think a lot of times we might be surprised at how little we actually talk with children and actually talk at children. So when we talk to children, it's part of a meaningful interaction that includes observing children, reflecting on what we're learning about them, and responding appropriately. So for instance, on the screen, you can see that a way you might reflect back to a child is to say something like, Carlos, I see that you used all the square blocks. You stacked them very high. A way of validating what a child is doing is to say, Jim, you figured out how to make the car go down the ramp faster. And even asking simple questions like, what was the hardest part, is a great way to really interact with children and to make them think. Sometimes teachers may have a hard time coming up with some of these open-ended questions. So one of our strategies that we like to share is to post a list of open-ended questions in the classroom. As you see here on the screen, you could be like a chart paper that's at teacher eye level, or you could have sentence strips with those same open-ended questions around the room. So the teacher, regardless of where she is in the classroom, can kind of spot those open-ended questions to be as a prompt for her. Let's look at the practical strategies for classroom organization strategies. So here, the more likely they are to follow them and to reinforce them with their friends. As part of the classroom organization, I thought I would share a little bit of this study that was done by the National Center for Early Development and Learning. They looked at multi-state pre-K classrooms, and what they did was they looked at child engagement throughout the day. Where were they spending their time? So what they did is they kept track of how much time was spent in the various types of activities. So you see over there 12% in literacy activities, 6% in math, etc. But probably most interestingly, the children spent about 44% of their time not involved in any of the other activities. So the researchers reported that these children were spending relatively large amounts of time waiting with little contact with adults. So let's take a look at the instructional support strategies. As Rebecca mentioned, instructional support is the one that is the area that probably gives the most stress to teachers. And what's important there is to focus on taking advantage of child-initiated learning, asking those open-ended questions about their work and discoveries to promote those higher-order thinking skills. So that comes along with doing things like using self-talk, providing hints, or discussing how the teacher plans her activities. Is she making time to really open up ways for the children to share their ideas? Another part of, there you go. Another part of supporting instructional support is by using hands-on exploration. Those promote these areas really naturally. As children are exploring real hands-on materials, they just naturally are drawn to these higher order concepts like analyzing and comparing and using different vocabulary to extend their learning. And this is the kind of thing that really makes children come alive with wonder. And the same thing for teachers too. Teachers get excited to see the children so engaged and excited about their work. This is when you see a lot of I wonder questions come through. Oh, sorry, I just want to mention, go back just one thing. So here you see children are exploring trees and balls. So you have you see a little girl in pink who's dropping the balls to see how they bounce. And the girl up here in the top right-hand corner, they're measuring how high the ball bounces by using string. And then you've got children exploring trees by reading about trees and also by seeing whether branches and acorns and things like that will float. So really hands-on, fun activities will keep the children involved and open up all sorts of great discussions. Okay. Another way to focus on these, the class dimensions, especially around instructional support, is a way of reading aloud. So we know that it's super fun for children to read aloud and to be read to. But what does the research say about the importance of reading aloud? Let's take a look. There you go. Effective read-alouds are those in which children are actively involved. So they're spending time asking questions, making predictions, answering questions. They're so excited by the story. They're retelling the story. They're dramatizing the story. They're hearing the vocabulary words in context. And they're learning to use those vocabulary words as they describe the illustrations or they discuss the book events. And they engage in analytical talk. They're thinking about why characters behave in a certain way or what might have happened if something had changed the story. And the last one, for me, is one of the more important ones. It's important that teachers read the same story over time. Now, children will always want to read the same book over and over. But it's important that as children are hearing the story over and over, they're learning something a little bit different each time. Each time they dig in a little bit more. And we at Teaching Strategies, if you notice in the picture here on the screen, we really do recommend that teachers engage in these repeated read-alouds in small groups. But having a small group, it helps children to really spend that one-on-one time with their teacher and for the teacher to understand where the child is developmentally and how to scaffold for the child to learn dig deeper into the book. So this is quick view of one of our documents that we have on our website under the Head Start page. This is an alignment of our creative curriculum for preschool with the classroom assessment scoring system, the class. So as you see on this screen here, on the left-hand side, you have the different elements of the creative curriculum. And on the right-hand side, on the top there, you've got the different dimensions.